Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Primacy Roundtable. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brian Libertor, and I am with John Libertor. And today we're going to discuss work comp claims. We've talked about auto and trucks, but now we're going to take a look at work comp claims and what we see to be the most important aspect in a work comp claim.
Yeah, and there's a lot of important aspects. I don't know that this is the most important, but I would offer that it's probably the most important early. So if you want to break it down to the first hour, and I know that sounds maybe ridiculous, but it's really not, and here's why. I've been given talks recently, we've been given talks about the first step in the whole claim reporting process, which is the loss report. A lot of companies don't really do that well, because they kind of gloss over the details and they capture only what's given to them instead of pulling from the driver or whoever's reporting the event, pulling from them what is needed. So you got to kind of look down the road 6 months and think about what could go wrong. Murphy's Law, right? So in the first hour, 2, 3 hours, however you want to look at it, really the most important thing in my mind is to scrutinize that loss report, and this is the thrust of what we want to talk about today. Look for, are you ready? A tortfeasor. Look for an at-fault party, in particular, if they are a commercial entity. And here's an example. A truck driver is sitting at a red light and gets rear-ended, feels a very light impact, and gets out of his truck, and it's a car. You know, somebody was inattentive, maybe on the cell phone, and bumps the back of the truck. Right there, you have an at-fault party, but what might keep a lid on that claim is the fact that that private passenger auto, if it's truly a private passenger auto, typically has nominal limits, maybe $50,000, maybe $100,000. Not that 100,000 is nominal, but a lot of times the private passenger car will have minimum limits, maybe 15,000 for a BI. However, that same scenario, driver gets bumped in the rear, and I've seen this 100 times, gets out of the truck and sees that it's another truck, a commercial vehicle. It could be a utility pickup truck for AT&T or some such company, Comcast, or it could be another big rig with a big well-known company. And maybe it doesn't happen at that initial moment, but eventually, and in short order, maybe in a day, somebody says to the driver, well, hey, I could show you how to get money out of that company. So we go from a scenario where there's a minor impact and it's caused by a commercial entity that has at least $1 million of coverage, to where the driver begins to think about the financial gain. And to do that, to file the third-party action or to file a third-party claim, he has to go through his own work comp carrier, right? And I submit to you that if you see a tortfeasor, an at-fault party, you should be very, very cautious on any kind of accident, really, whether it's serious or not, because to file that third-party claim, that driver has to go through his own work comp carrier, and there you may be caught up in a tangle of, well, the adjuster is busy and they're relying on the doctor only, and the doctor is relying on the injured worker. Meanwhile, the medical gets built up, right? The medical gets built up, and that becomes the third-party BI claim. And I'll give you one example. So a driver reported an event that he had delivered to a customer. And when he delivered to the customer, he needed to use the restroom. No problem with that, right? So he goes into the restroom, and there's water on the floor, which can happen, and he slips and falls. And when he falls, he allegedly hits his head and his knee, and he files a work comp claim. Well, here's what's interesting about that case. Again, it's a third party, right? So at the outset, nobody paid a whole lot of attention to this case. But what we found out in pretty short order is that this guy was cited for DUI in his personal vehicle. And the trucking company called him about that, and he tried to allege that it wasn't him, it was that he was a victim of
Identity theft.
identity theft.
Yeah,
Thank
and that
you.
DUI was just prior to the slip and fall?
Just prior to.
Okay.
So here we have a driver who's trying to concoct a way to blame somebody else, number one, and number two, file a work comp claim, and number three, file a third-party BI claim. And the real fascinating part of this story is that as we dug into the claim more and more, and we went to look at the driver, our customer's personnel file, because we wanted to really understand this guy and what he was all about, we found that on his application, if you can believe this, but this is true, on his application there were names of references, and there was a name listed there of a detective from a small Illinois town, and that looks pretty impressive, right? Well, it just so happens that the same detective, when this guy had the DUI, the driver submitted this detective's name and a letter authored by the detective that this man was the victim of identity theft. In fact, he wasn't. It was a scheme to cover up his work comp claim. But again, the big thing there for me is the fact that when this claim was reported, there was a third party, it was a commercial entity that he could go after. And that's what today is all about, that whether the accident is serious, whether it's absolutely legitimate, whether it's fraudulent, whether it's minor, you just got to keep your eyes and ears open on those cases, because it may take a nanosecond or it may take 6 months for that employee who's injured to realize the potential for financial gain, right?
Yep.
So what would you say is one of the first steps, if you see that red flag, what's one of the first steps you want to take? What would you say? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, so I would say get a recorded statement from the injured party or the other party involved. But then I would say reach out.
So you're saying the injured worker and the third party. You're saying both?
Yes.
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 I agree with you.
Yes, and I would also say reach out to the work comp carrier for the other party, the one who could potentially come back. To you with the work comp lien. So reach out to the work comp carrier and gauge them and see what they're doing, if they're being aggressive or if they know a lot of the details, if they know the facts. You can feel a little bit better about it if they say, this is what we got, this is what we're looking at. I think a lot of times we see that we don't find that. It's some of that investigation on a work comp claim is a little glossed over. So
and I'm going to insert something. I was taught many years ago, and I think this is absolutely intelligent, that when you reach out to that work comp carrier, that adjuster, first of all, know that they're very busy people, okay? But number two, you would hope that they're kind of on your side. If you have questions about the claim, there should be some investigation going on. A lot of times, as Brian said, the adjuster is not putting a whole lot of time and effort into the investigation. So you sometimes have to do it for them.
Right.
But you might, at a minimum, be able to split the investigation expense. So maybe it's surveillance or some other thing that you're going to do, and say, hey, why don't we go in together 50-50? This is what I'm going to do. And, in other words, I'm going to get this done for both of us, right? To be honest, I don't see that happening a lot, but it's worth trying, and you can cut your expenses.
yeah, has that
in
happened?
half.
Has that?
Yes.
Have you done that successfully?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you lay it out, and you find
Yeah.
an intelligent, sympathetic work comp adjuster who's after the truth.
Yeah.
And you're not talking about thousands of dollars, really.
Right.
Maybe a few $100s at the outset.
Right.
So again, the moral of the story today is when you see that third party pop up on the loss report, you should be very, very cautious that the case could go south. And one of the big mechanisms for that case going south is a very busy work comp adjuster. And many times I make, maybe it's too far reaching, but many times when I'm giving a talk, I tell people, look, here's a broad brush statement. Work comp adjusters don't investigate claims. Why? They're just too busy. They're just too busy to really put the time and effort into it and to really scrutinize. Now, easy to go overboard. I'm not suggesting that, but simply this, if there is a third-party tortfeasor, you should be extremely cautious and keep an eye on that case. And as Brian said, reach the work comp adjuster, get a statement from the injured worker, and reach out to that third party, whoever it is, safety director, etc., and see what information they have, and more or less let them know that you're going to be looking at this closely, and you might be reaching out to them time and again, because they're going to have skin in the game. They're a third party, right? They're a third party, and your injured worker might be coming after them.
Yeah.
Okay? So.
All right, that is all. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks.